The sky was burning red above the rocky surface of the broken moon as heavy clouds moved like waves across the ruins. Beneath the jagged cliffs and crushed towers, a human named Ray moved carefully through the strange world. His boots crushed the ash-covered stones while strange animal sounds echoed from far places. He had come here alone with one purpose: to recover a lost data core for his team before nightfall. Ray was no soldier, but he had the heart of one. Born on a colony where survival was the only rule, he learned early how to take risks and keep moving forward. On this dead moon, he felt something different though. A pull, as if something hidden was waiting for him beyond the ridge. He followed a narrow path between sharp rocks and saw old markings glowing faintly along the walls. Not human work, ancient patterns, alien language maybe. His breath slowed as he stepped deeper inside a broken tunnel carved by hands he did not know. Inside it was quiet, too quiet. The kind that made even a strong man feel alone. Then he heard it, a cry, not loud, not a scream, just enough to freeze his steps. He turned sharply and moved toward the sound, his heartbeat rising with each step. He climbed a pile of fallen stone and found a large chamber, lit by weak light coming from a cracked ceiling in the middle of the room. A young alien girl lay trapped under a broken metal beam. Her skin was pale blue, her body small and thin, and her eyes wide with fear. She tried to speak but only let out a soft gasp. She was wounded and bleeding from one leg, and the beam held her tight. Ray looked around. The floor near her was unstable. One wrong step could bring the ceiling down. He knew what kind of trap this was. The moment he touched that beam or stepped too close, the structure might collapse. Still he moved, carefully, slowly. Without fear, the girl watched him with eyes full of confusion. Maybe she had never seen a human before. Maybe she thought he came to hurt her, but Ray showed no harm. He crouched near her and checked the metal beam with both hands. Heavy, too heavy to lift easily. He spoke gently, telling her to stay calm, though he had no idea if she understood his words. From above the tunnel, dust fell. The roof was shaking. Time was short. Ray knew his mission was not this. He was not supposed to get involved. He was not here to play hero, but leaving her behind felt wrong. Deeply wrong. He set his gear down and braced himself beside the beam. With all his strength, he pushed. His muscles screamed with effort. The beam did not move. He changed position and tried again. The girl winced in pain as the pressure shifted. Ray stopped and looked at her eyes again. There was no anger in them, just fear and the tiniest drop of hope. That was enough for him. He adjusted his stance and gave one final push. The metal shifted. Floor cracked. Everything started shaking around them. The floor shook with growing strength as dust rained from the cracks above. Ray could feel the heat rising from deep within the stone, as if the moon itself was angry. The broken beam shifted under his hands, now wet with sweat and dirt. His breath came fast, but his focus stayed sharp. He did not care about the ceiling or the falling stones or the sharp pain in his arms. He only cared about the small alien girl still trapped beneath the weight. She watched him with wide eyes as if unable to believe that this human would risk everything for her. Her chest rose and fell quickly as fear gripped her heart. She did not speak, but her silence held questions Ray could almost hear. Why would he help her? What did he want from her? Was this a trick? Ray spoke again, with soft words that carried calm strength. He asked her to trust him. He asked her to stay still. He knew she might not understand, but he spoke anyway. Words had power even when the meaning was lost. His voice told her he meant no harm. He reached beneath the beam and placed his arms under the edge where the weight felt heaviest. He pushed once more, this time with everything he had. His legs shook from the effort. His shoulders burned with fire. The beam lifted only a little, but it was enough. The alien girl pulled her injured leg out with effort and pain. Ray lost grip. and the beam dropped beside him with a loud crash. The sound echoed through the chamber like thunder. Small pieces of rock began falling from above. The whole place was becoming unstable. He reached for her hand without thinking and helped her up. She could barely stand, so he lifted her into his arms and turned toward the exit. The way out was not smooth. The tunnel behind them had already begun to close. Falling debris blocked parts of the path. Ray moved fast but carefully through the narrow way with the girl in his arms. She held onto his neck tightly, as if trusting him now. As if something inside her heart had changed. Outside the tunnel, the sky had darkened even more. Strange lightning flashed across the horizon. The wind carried the smell of burnt metal and distant fire. Ray knew they had little time left. A storm was building, and not just a weather storm. The kind of storm that came when machines buried. Deep in Moons woke up angry. He looked toward the cliffs where his small camp was hidden. It was far. Too far for her to walk in this condition. He placed her down for a moment and wrapped a strip of cloth around her bleeding leg to stop the flow. She winced but did not pull away. Her hands gripped the ground as if drawing strength from it. Ray picked her up again and began walking faster. Now the ground trembled under his feet. Lights appeared in the clouds above. Bright, unnatural shapes spinning slowly like eyes watching from the sky. The machines of the old builders were waking. The alien girl suddenly raised her hand and pointed toward a narrow path leading through a cluster of stone towers. Her voice spoke strange words, but her tone was clear. She wanted him to follow that path instead. Ray paused only a moment, then nodded. He turned in that direction and moved quickly through the tight space between towers. The wind grew stronger. It howled like a living thing. The girl placed her hand on Ray's chest and pressed gently. Her touch brought warmth even through his gear. He looked down and saw her lips move again. She was chanting something. A soft chant like a song meant to calm wild beasts. The air around them shimmered for a second. Then the wind passed without harm. The path ahead cleared as if something powerful had heard her voice and stepped aside. Ray kept walking, but his eyes stayed on her. He had never seen anything like this. No device. No tech. Just her voice and her hands and the world responding. When they reached the end of the tower path, a glowing wall stood in front of them. No door, no opening, just solid light. Ray slowed his steps, unsure what to do. The girl leaned forward and whispered in his ear one single word. Then she touched the wall it vanished behind. It was a chamber filled with soft light and gentle warmth. Safe, quiet, hidden from the storms outside. Ray stepped inside and placed her down on a raised platform made of smooth stone. She closed her eyes and rested as if the place was healing her already. Ray looked around. The walls pulsed with energy. Symbols appeared and faded. This was no ordinary shelter. It was something ancient, something sacred maybe. He stood still and waited, his heart still racing from the escape. His body shaking from effort. The girl opened her eyes and looked at him again. This time her eyes were calm. No fear, no confusion, only a deep look that held meaning beyond words. She raised her hand and placed it on his cheek. A single tear ran down her face, not from pain, from something else. Gratitude, maybe connection, maybe. Ray did not move. He just watched her as the light of the chamber wrapped around them both. He knew nothing about her name, her people, her past. But in that moment he felt something powerful. A bond forming between two strangers from different stars. And deep inside, he felt that this was only the beginning. Ray sat near the edge of the glowing platform with his back resting against the smooth wall. His muscles ached from the long escape. His clothes were torn. His hands were covered in dust and dried blood, yet his mind could not settle. He watched the alien girl lying peacefully as the soft light of the chamber surrounded her. Her skin now had a gentle glow. The wound on her leg had stopped bleeding. A thin layer of energy circled the injury like a living bandage. Ray did not understand the process, but he felt that this place was helping her, healing her, protecting her, maybe even listening to her. Outside the chamber, the storm grew louder. Heavy booms rolled across the land. Lightning lit up the cracks in the moon's surface. Still, the chamber remained calm and untouched, as if it existed outside the chaos. Ray looked toward the entrance, but the wall had closed again. No visible opening. No control panel. Just a smooth surface of light holding back the world. The girl slowly opened her eyes again and sat up with effort. Her movement was weak but steady. She turned toward Ray and studied him in silence. Her gaze was deep and steady. It was not the gaze of a frightened girl anymore. It was something older, wiser, powerful yet gentle. She reached out her hand and pointed to the stone beneath them. Symbols rose to the surface as her fingers moved through the air. Shapes and lines danced together and formed images. Ray leaned forward to watch. The symbols told a story. Not through words, but through motion and light. He saw images of tall beings with glowing skin standing beside humans. He saw a great fire in the stars and machines breaking worlds. He saw battles fought with no weapons, only minds. He saw bonds formed between hearts, not armies. He saw peace, then silence. Then the image faded, only darkness remained. The girl looked at him again. Her hands moved slowly as she formed signs in the air. Ray watched carefully. She pointed at herself, then at him. She placed her palm over her chest, then pointed to the platform. He did not know the exact meaning, but something inside him understood. She was not just thanking him. She was telling him they were connected now. He nodded slowly. No words passed between them, yet they shared something real. Suddenly, the light in the chamber shifted. The walls pulsed faster. A sound came from the floor, like a heartbeat. The girl stood with care and walked toward the center of the chamber. She raised her hands high and closed her eyes. The light around her brightened. Her skin shimmered like silver dust underwater. Ray stood as well. He felt pressure in the air now. Not danger, but weight. A force pressing down from above. The chamber responded to her presence. The walls changed color. The air grew warmer. Symbols floated between them like glowing leaves in slow wind. Then a deep voice echoed through the chamber. Not male or female. Not machine or living, something between both. The voice spoke in slow, steady rhythm. Ray could not understand the words, but the tone carried knowledge and power. The girl turned to him and gestured for him to step forward. He hesitated for a moment, but trusted her. He walked to her side. The floor beneath them changed. The stone became soft like water, holding their weight yet shifting with each breath. The air around them pulsed again. A circle of light formed under their feet. The voice returned louder this time, and the chamber began to rotate. Not in motion, but in feeling. The space bent and stretched around them without movement. Ray's mind felt pressure like a dream too close to waking. Yet his feet stayed firm. His balance remained. Suddenly, he saw visions. Not dreams, but memories not his own. He saw the girl standing before a tall council. He saw a broken world burning in blue fire. He saw her escaping through tunnels chased by shadows. He saw her alone, hiding, waiting, hoping for someone. Then he saw himself landing on this moon, walking through ruins, finding her, lifting the beam, carrying her, running from the storm, entering this chamber, standing now beside her. All of it laid before him, not as memories, but as a path leading to now. The light faded again. The room calmed. The girl stepped back and looked at Ray. Her eyes were moist, not from fear, but from release. She moved close and placed her hand over his chest. Then she leaned forward and rested her forehead against his. In that moment, something passed between them. A pulse, a wave of energy. Ray felt heat rise through his body, but it did not burn. It healed. It filled the cracks in his soul. The pain in his arms faded. The weight in his chest lifted. His vision cleared. His mind quieted. He took a deep breath. For the first time since landing on this moon, he felt peace. Complete and honest peace. The girl stepped back and smiled. A small, pure smile filled with meaning. Then she pointed to the wall. It opened slowly. Outside, the sky had cleared. The storm was gone. The ground no longer shook. Light broke through the clouds like morning after a long night. Ray looked back once at the chamber, then stepped outside with her by his side. Something had changed between them. Not just survival, not just help, not just escape. A bond now lived between two souls from different stars. A bond stronger than fear, stronger than war. A bond that would guide both towards something greater. Ray stepped onto the rocky path with the alien girl walking beside him. The wind had grown calm now. No more fire in the sky. No thunder. No shaking ground. The air had become quiet like a forest after heavy rain. Rays of sunlight broke through scattered clouds and touched the land in soft colors. The moon that had looked dead now felt alive again. The girl walked with slow steps, but her movements were steady. She kept her eyes on the path ahead, but her presence felt stronger now. There was something in the way she walked beside Ray, not like a saved one following a rescuer, but like an equal walking with someone chosen. They moved between old ruins where the walls rose in half-built towers and silent machines stood like statues frozen in time. Ray had seen ruins before, but this place felt different. It had not been lost to war or time. It had been left behind by purpose. The machines were still waiting, as if asleep, not destroyed, as they passed through one tall gate made of dark stone. The girl raised her hand again and spoke a short chant. The stone shifted and revealed a hidden trail beneath overgrown roots. Ray followed her without question. Trust had grown between them without needing long talks or promises. They reached a circular platform built from smooth metal with strange writing along its edges. The girl stopped and touched a small piece of the center. Light rose from the floor and a thin beam shot into the sky. Ray stepped back, but the girl motioned for him to wait. The beam formed a circle in the air above them. Inside it, a floating screen showed a map of the moon. Small red lights blinked across the surface. One of the lights was moving fast toward their location. The girl's face grew serious. She pointed at the light, then at Ray, then toward a cliff behind them. Ray understood at once. Someone or something was coming. Not friendly. Maybe a hunter. Maybe a machine. Maybe worse. The girl moved quickly now, and Ray followed. The cliff path was narrow, and sharp winds pulled at their clothes as they climbed. Rocks crumbled underfoot. Still they pressed forward. Above them stood a tall arch made of silver metal that hummed with low sound. As they reached the top, the girl stopped and turned to face Ray. She placed both hands over his and looked into his eyes with focus and calm. She said one word and pointed at his chest. Then she placed her hand over her own heart. The message was clear. He carried something now. Not in hand, but inside. Ray did not understand the full meaning, but he nodded. He could feel it too. Something had changed deep inside him. His vision was sharper. His heartbeat stronger. His thoughts clearer. He felt more alive than ever before. The girl stepped through the arch, and the metal reacted to her presence. The ground opened, and stairs appeared leading into the cliff itself. They entered the hidden space together. The air inside was cold at first, then turned warm like spring wind. Lights moved along the walls, as if following their steps. At the end of the tunnel they reached a chamber filled with devices and tools, unknown to Ray. A round table stood in the center with a glowing core spinning above it. The girl moved toward the table and placed her hand on the surface. Images rose again. This time, not just memories. These were instructions, plans, a network of energy points marked across different worlds. The girl pointed at one glowing point, far away from the current location. Then she looked at Ray. He stepped forward. The light wrapped around his hand without pain. It scanned his shape and sent out a pulse. The table responded by shifting colors. The system now accepted him. He had been given access. The girl placed a small silver ring in his palm. It was warm and light like air, yet felt solid. She nodded once, then turned toward the back wall where another arch stood waiting. Suddenly the chamber shook with force. The light from outside flickered. The red light on the earlier map had arrived. Something was here now. Something that followed them. Ray moved closer to the girl, ready to defend her again. But she raised her hand and stepped forward with calm power. She touched a wall panel, and a shield covered the entrance behind them. No one could come through now without force, but time was short. The girl turned to Ray again and reached out. Her hands touched the sides of his face gently. Then she leaned close and rested her forehead against his one more time. This time her mind opened to his. Ray felt images not just from her memory, but from her people. Their story, their loss, their last hope placed into her hands. And now into his. She stepped back with tears in her eyes and pointed toward the exit tunnel on the other side. He had to go. He had to take the knowledge, the ring, the connection. He had to carry it beyond this moon. Ray stood still only for a moment. Then he nodded. He placed the ring on his finger. It glowed once, then vanished. Its power now hidden inside him. He turned and began to walk toward the tunnel as the chamber shook again. Before leaving, he looked back one last time. The girl stood tall with her hands raised toward the roof. Energy flowed from her body into the walls. She was not escaping. She was staying behind to protect him. The meaning of her choice struck deep. In Ray's chest, she had trusted him, saved him, given him power. And now she was risking everything again for him. He turned and ran through the exit with speed and fire in his heart. Ray moved through the tunnel with fast steps and a mind full of weight. Behind him, the ground shook again, and the air pushed forward. Like a heavy wave, he knew the chamber was under attack now. The girl had chosen to stay. She had chosen to face whatever came through the storm so that he could get away. He wanted to turn back, but he also knew the meaning behind her choice. She had given him a gift greater than escape. She had trusted him with her future. The light from the tunnel changed to a soft blue as he stepped out into an open cave. A large cliff edge stood before him. Below the cliff, a wide plain stretched into the distance with cracked ground and old structures covered in ash. Wind moved across the plain with quiet breath. For a moment, everything felt frozen in time. Ray looked down at his hand. The ring was gone from sight, but he could still feel it like a soft energy inside his skin. It pulsed slowly as if alive. His chest felt warm and steady. The pain in his body had faded, and the heavy pressure in his mind had lifted. Something inside him had changed, and it was not just strength. It was a kind of clarity he had never felt before. He looked up at the sky where thick clouds moved across stars. The storm had passed, but something far above was still moving. Large shapes floated behind the clouds with blinking lights and long shadows. Not machines from Earth, something older. Watching from a distance, maybe waiting for a signal. Maybe ready to react if the wrong hand took the power he now carried. Ray moved down the slope and crossed the plain with quiet steps. He passed broken towers and empty walkways where once life had moved. Every structure he saw now felt familiar in a strange way, like he had walked these roads long ago in a different form. He did not know if the girl had given him memory or simply connection, but the land no longer felt foreign. At the far end of the plain, a black monolith stood with a single light at its peak. Ray moved toward it. As he stepped closer, the light responded to his presence and spread across the stone in slow waves. A doorway formed in front of him with air that shimmered like heat. He stepped through and found himself inside a control room. Made of smooth silver walls and silent panels, no buttons, no wires, just surfaces that responded to movement. A small round pedestal rose from the center of the floor. He walked to it and placed his hand on top. The ring pulsed again inside his. Hand, the pedestal lit up. A low hum filled the space as maps began to form in the air around him. Not just maps of this moon, but of many others. Worlds connected by a network of ancient paths. Energy lines stretching across galaxies. Ray stood still and let the images move. They were showing him the full picture. This place was not just a ruin. It was a relay station, a gateway. A forgotten key once used to share knowledge across far worlds. And now it had been reawakened, by him, by her. By the choice they made together. The panel beneath his hand opened slightly. Inside it a single crystal sat in a carved space. Bright green, small but powerful. He took it gently and placed it in his bag. A message flashed across the air in symbols he could now read with ease. Not because he had studied them, but because the connection had changed him. You are the bearer. Now, protect what remains. Carry it forward. Do not forget her name. He closed his eyes for a moment. He had never learned her name. She had never spoken it. Yet somehow he knew it now. It lived inside his thoughts like a quiet song. He whispered it softly to the silent air around him. The chamber responded with a soft glow, as if listening. Ray stepped back outside. The sky was brighter now. Stars had come out from behind the clouds. One of them blinked twice, then disappeared. He knew what that meant. The signal had been received. Others were coming. Not to destroy, but to rebuild. To protect what had been. Losty climbed a tall rock at the edge of the plain and looked back one last time toward the direction of the chamber. It stood far away beyond broken ground and sleeping towers. He placed a hand over his heart and bowed his head for a moment. She had stayed behind so he could walk forward. She had given him strength. She had given him purpose. What she did had changed him completely. Not only his body but his soul. The wind touched his face again. This time it carried warmth. A sign that the world had shifted. He turned away from the past and began walking toward a future unknown, but full of meaning. Every step he took now was no longer just for himself. It was for her. For her people. For every voice that had fallen silent, waiting to be remembered. Ray did not know what waited ahead. But he knew one truth clearly now: one act of courage could build a bridge between stars, and one bond between strangers could change everything. The end.